What would change in your life if, starting today, you truly put God first? Consider this order is not a small thing. It is everything. A shirt buttons straight only when the first button is right. Life works the same way. When God holds first place, decisions that once felt heavy grow light, confusion gives way to clarity, and what used to fight against you begins to fall into line. Putting God first is not about adding one more task to a crowded list. It is about changing the list entirely. It is moving from a life you manage to a life you surrender, so that wisdom, peace, and power can flow in the right direction. Putting God first begins with identity. Before the meetings, before the notifications, before the rush of expectations, remember who you are and whose you are. Activity without identity breeds anxiety. When you anchor your value in God, you stop renting your worth from people's opinions and outcomes. You walk into rooms with quiet strength because your soul is not auditioning. You serve without striving, lead without losing yourself, and listen without fear. The world will try to name you by your last success or last mistake. Putting God first lets you receive a name that doesn't shake when seasons change. Putting God first means presence before plans. Many of us live on emergency mode, reacting to the loudest voice in the room. But the loudest voice is rarely the truest voice. Begin your day by turning your attention to God, not as superstition, but as alignment. Give your first moments, your first thoughts, your first gratitude. Let stillness become your strength. From that center, you don't just make plans, you receive direction. Doors you were about to kick down open with a touch. Paths you couldn't see become visible, not because the path got easier, but because your sight got clearer. Putting God first calls for obedience over outcomes. Outcomes are beautiful, but they are also loud liars. They promise significance and deliver a moving target. Obedience is quieter, but it builds a life that stands. When God nudges you to forgive, to apologize, to take the high road, to take the next step, do it. Do it when it's celebrated and when it's misunderstood. Do it when the math doesn't add up, but the peace does. Let faith move you from, what if it doesn't work, to, who am I walking with? When you care more about being faithful than being impressive, you become unshakable, because storms can rattle results, but they can't touch a rooted heart. Putting God first transforms stewardship. Everything in your hands, your hours, your gifts, your resources is entrusted, not owned. When God is first, you stop competing and start contributing. You stop hoarding and start sowing. You invest your time where it bears eternal fruit, not just immediate applause. You sharpen your talents because they are instruments, not ornaments. You give generously, not to be noticed, because you have noticed how generous God has already been. And here is the mystery. When you live open-handed, you never live empty-handed. Multiplication visits the places where gratitude lives. Putting God first shows up as love in action. It is easy to speak about devotion. It is holy to demonstrate it. The measure of first place is how we treat the last, the least, and the lost. When God is first, people are not projects, they are precious. You listen longer. You serve without keeping score. You bless those who cannot pay you back. You bring light into rooms that gave up on mourning. In your home, it looks like patience. In your workplace, it looks like integrity. In your city, it looks like building bridges where others build walls. Love becomes your language and your legacy. Putting God first reshapes how you handle both success and struggle. Success without God first is a trap, a mirror that makes you fall in love with your reflection. With God first, success becomes a tool, something you stand on to lift others higher. Struggle without God first feels like the end of the story. With God first, struggle becomes a chapter filled with seeds that will one day be your testimony. You learn to work from rest rather than rest from work. You learn to say, even here, even now, I am carried. So how do you begin practically, tangibly, immediately? Priority creates power. When God is first, everything else finds its rightful place. Think about the design of life. It thrives on order, not chaos. The rising of the sun, the rhythm of the seasons, the beating of the human heart, all follow a sequence that sustains balance. The same principle applies to our lives. When the highest priority is rightly placed, when God is first in thought, affection, and decision, everything else begins to align in ways we could never manufacture on our own. It is not that problems disappear, rather the lens through which we see them changes. What once felt like heavy burdens become opportunities for growth, because the foundation is steady, just like a house built on a firm base can withstand storms. A life ordered around God can endure setbacks without collapsing. Many people spend their days trying to juggle competing priorities, career, relationships, finances, ambitions, and health. They constantly feel the weight of not having enough time or energy. But the truth is, misaligned priorities create exhaustion. When lesser things take first place, they demand from you what they cannot give back, leaving you drained, anxious, and unfulfilled. Money cannot give peace. Success cannot give rest. Recognition cannot give security. When these things are placed at the center, they overpromise and underdeliver. But when God is first, you begin to experience a divine order where peace surpasses pressure, purpose outweighs performance, and strength comes not from striving, but from surrender. Putting God first means placing Him at the center of every choice, not just as a part of your life, but as the guiding force of your life. It is a shift from self-dependence to divine dependence. It is choosing alignment over ambition, direction over distraction, essence over excess. When God is the anchor, you no longer need to cling to control. You start to realize that your value is not determined by what you accumulate or accomplish, but by who you belong to. This inner clarity empowers you to say no to what doesn't serve your purpose and yes to what advances it. Suddenly, what once seemed confusing becomes clear because priority creates perspective. Think about the power of beginnings. The first step sets the tone for the journey. The first brick determines the line of the wall. The first note guides the harmony of the song. In the same way, putting God first at the beginning of your day, at the start of your decisions, and at the forefront of your relationships establishes a flow that keeps everything in balance. Without that order, even good things become sources of stress. But with that order, even challenges can become sources of strength. This is why many discover that when God is first, time seems to expand, wisdom flows more freely, and the heart feels lighter even in the midst of difficulty. The truth is, everyone puts something first, whether it's work, family approval, or even themselves. But only when God holds that place of ultimate priority do all other areas find their rightful rhythm. Family is loved better when God is first. Work is done with greater integrity and joy when God is first. Finances are handled with more wisdom when God is first. Even personal growth becomes more authentic when God is first. This isn't about living with less passion. It's about fueling passion from the right source. When you start with God, you gain a strength that no setback can steal and a clarity that no confusion can cloud. Priority creates power because it simplifies life, it removes the noise of endless striving and directs energy toward what actually matters. It builds resilience because when storms come, and they will, you are not tossed around by shifting priorities but held steady by an unshakable one. To put God first is to choose the firm foundation, the lasting center, and the guiding light, and when that choice is made, everything else, your goals, your relationships, your dreams, begins to fall into place not perfectly, but purposefully. Identity before activity, who you are in God guides what you do in a world that constantly pushes us to prove our worth through performance, achievements, and the opinions of others. It is easy to lose sight of this truth. People wake up each morning already feeling behind, as though they must accomplish more, earn more, and be more to justify their existence. But when your identity is secure in God, you no longer live for validation, you live from it. Your sense of worth no longer shifts with circumstances or people's approval because it is anchored in something deeper, something eternal. This shift changes everything about the way you move through life. Activity without identity breeds exhaustion. You can run fast, but if you don't know why you're running, every step feels heavier. Many people chase titles, positions, or recognition, believing those achievements will finally make them feel complete. But every time they reach one milestone, another takes its place. They live on a treadmill of doing without ever arriving at being. True identity, however, releases you from this cycle. It reminds you that you're not defined by your last success or your last failure. You are not just a job title, not just a role you play, not just the opinions people form about you. You are defined by God's design and intention for your life, and that identity stands firm no matter what changes around you. When you begin with identity, activity becomes purposeful. You stop scattering your energy on every opportunity that comes your way and instead focus on what truly aligns with who you are. If you know you are called to build, you will stop wasting time comparing yourself to those who are called to lead in different fields. If you know you are a person of peace, you will stop engaging in battles that only drain you. Identity acts as a compass, showing you not only where to go, but also what to leave behind. It allows you to say no without guilt and yes without fear, because you know who you are and whose you are. Think about how easily people lose themselves when their identity is tied to fragile things. A career shift can shatter them. A broken relationship can undo them. A financial loss can paralyze them. That is because their sense of self was built on sand, not rock. But when identity is rooted in God, storms may come, but they cannot destroy the core of who you are. You may bend, but you will not break. You may stumble, but you will not stay down. You may weep, but you will not lose hope. Identity gives you resilience because it reminds you that you are more than your circumstances. Identity also fuels confidence. When you understand who you are in God, you no longer walk into rooms wondering if you belong. You no longer shrink when others succeed, because their success does not threaten your value, and you no longer need to manipulate outcomes to feel secure because your worth does not hang on results. Confidence is not arrogance, it is assurance. It is the quiet strength that comes from knowing your life has meaning beyond the moment. It is the ability to serve without seeking applause and to lead without demanding recognition. When you know your identity, your activity reflects that strength, and others are drawn to the authenticity they see in you. The order is vital identity before activity. Get this backwards, and you will always chase identity through your activity. You will work harder, do more, and still feel empty. But when you embrace who you are first, what you do becomes an expression of that truth, not a desperate attempt to create it. Your actions become aligned, your energy becomes focused, and your life begins to reflect purpose instead of pressure. Who you are in God shapes how you love, how you give, how you lead, and how you serve. And when you live from that place, activity is no longer a burden. It becomes a natural overflow of a life rooted in identity. Presence before plans, seek alignment, then assignment. So often in life, people are obsessed with planning every detail, mapping every move, and controlling every outcome. They live with the illusion that if they could just plan well enough, they could secure peace, clarity, and success. Yet many who cling to their plans most tightly still feel the most restless. Why? Because plans without presence are fragile. They may look good on paper, But without the grounding of God's presence, they lack the strength to withstand disruption, delay, or disappointment. The truth is that presence is greater than planning because it roots you in alignment with the one who sees beyond what you can imagine. There is nothing wrong with making plans, but the mistake is believing that plans alone can carry you. Without presence, plans become pressure. They weigh you down with expectations that you must make everything happen in your own strength. But when you choose presence before plans, you are no longer striving to force doors open. You are waiting to be guided to the right ones. You are not just mapping out steps. You are moving with direction. Presence shifts your perspective from how do I control this to how do I align with this. It changes the posture of your heart from anxiety to assurance because you know you are not walking alone. Presence before plans means giving God the first attention before you give the world your energy. It is taking time to quiet the noise before you schedule the tasks. When you pause long enough to acknowledge God's presence, you discover clarity that no checklist could provide. Suddenly, what felt complicated simplifies. What felt urgent begins to shrink in importance. While what truly matters comes into focus, plans birthed out of presence carry a weight of wisdom and peace that makes them different from human-made strategies. They are not just good ideas, they are God ideas aligned, timely, and purposeful. Think about how many times people make plans only to find that life interrupts them. A sudden loss, a closed door, an unexpected opportunity. None of these fit neatly into our calendars. If we live only by plans, we crumble when things don't go according to them. But when presence comes first, interruptions are not seen as threats, they are viewed as divine redirections. Presence teaches you to trust timing, even when timing disagrees with your schedule. It builds the patience to wait and the courage to move when the nudge comes, whether or not the details make sense. With presence, you walk in rhythm instead of racing in fear. Presence before plans also releases the weight of overthinking. So often, people freeze because they are afraid of making the wrong choice. They analyze every option, worrying about what might happen. But when you prioritize presence, decision making is no longer about fear. It is about faith. You ask not, what if I fail, but what keeps me aligned? And alignment always leads to assignment. When your heart is centered in God's presence, you begin to notice opportunities that align with your calling. You see needs you were meant to meet, doors you were meant to walk through, people you were meant to serve. Presence unlocks assignment, and assignment fuels purpose. Living with presence before plans means you can rest even in uncertainty. You do not have to know the entire path to take the next step. You do not have to predict the outcome to trust the process. Plans often demand clarity before action, but presence gives peace even without clarity. It is the assurance that as long as you are aligned, you cannot be lost. It is the freedom of knowing that success is not about perfectly executing your plan, but faithfully following God's leading. Presence before plans does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means prioritizing alignment over control. It is choosing to sit before you sprint, to listen before you speak, and to align before you act. From that place, your plans are not just human strategies, but divine partnerships. They carry power because they are rooted in presence. And when presence is first, even when plans shift, you remain steady, anchored, guided, and assured that the path ahead, though uncertain to you, is already clear to God. Obedience over outcomes. Trust the path even when results are unseen. One of the greatest challenges in life is our human desire to see results immediately. We live in a culture that measures success by outcomes, numbers, recognition, progress that can be tracked and celebrated. But the spiritual life does not always work that way. There are seasons when you are asked to take a step without seeing the full picture, to trust a voice rather than a visible result, to keep walking when nothing around you seems to affirm your choice. This is the essence of obedience, of following the leading of God, not because the path is clear, but because your heart is committed. True obedience requires surrender, and surrender always feels risky to the part of us that craves certainty. When you live by outcomes alone, you will constantly ride the roller coaster of emotions. When the outcome is favorable, you feel secure, but when it is delayed or disappointing, you feel shaken. This creates a life of instability, always dependent on what is visible. Obedience, however, creates steadiness. It shifts your focus from temporary results to eternal significance. It teaches you to move in faith, not in fear, knowing that the unseen is often more important than the seen. Many breakthroughs are born in the hidden places where obedience was chosen over convenience, where faith was chosen over comfort. Even when the outcome is not what you hope, obedience ensures that your life is aligned with God's purpose. Obedience is not passive, it is active trust. It means showing up when it is easier to shrink back. It means forgiving when you want to hold a grudge. It means giving when you feel like withholding. It means speaking truth when silence would protect your image. These choices may not always lead to quick or visible rewards, but they plant seeds that grow in unseen soil. Those seeds bear fruit that outcomes alone could never produce. The fruit of obedience is peace that outlasts chaos, resilience that outlasts trials, and character that outlasts applause. Choosing obedience over outcomes also frees you from the tyranny of comparison. When you chase outcomes, it is natural to measure your progress against others, how fast they are moving, how much they are achieving, how visible their results appear. but obedience is deeply personal. It is between you and God. Your path will not look like anyone else's, and it is not meant to. What matters is not whether you produce what others produce, but whether you are faithful with what has been placed in your hands. This mindset frees you to celebrate others without jealousy and to walk your journey without shame. There will be times when obedience feels like loss. You may give up an opportunity that promised visibility because you sensed it was not aligned. You may release something you wanted because holding on would cost your integrity. You may walk a slower road while others seem to sprint ahead. But hidden in those moments is a deeper truth. You are not loosening. You are choosing a higher standard, one that values faithfulness over flash, alignment over achievement, eternity over temporary success. And while the world may not applaud that choice, heaven does. And in time, you discover that what looked like loss was actually gain, because obedience leads you to places that outcomes alone can never take you. Obedience over outcomes also strengthens your endurance. When you no longer need results to validate you, you are free to keep going even when progress is invisible. You keep praying even when answers seem delayed. You keep building even when recognition is absent. You keep loving even when it is not returned. This consistency is where true strength is born. Outcomes may encourage you for a moment, but obedience anchors you for a lifetime. It gives you the courage to walk through valleys, the patience to wait on timing, and the humility to stay grounded when blessings come. Obedience is the pathway to true success, not because it guarantees the outcome you imagine, but because it guarantees alignment with the one who holds all outcomes. Outcomes shift, but obedience shapes destiny. And when you choose obedience over outcomes, you walk in a peace that no disappointment can steal, a strength that no delay can weaken, and a purpose that no circumstance can cancel. This is the life of faith, trusting the path even when the results are unseen, and knowing that obedience is never wasted. Stewardship of time, talent, and treasure. Honor God with what you've been given. Everything you hold in your hands today, whether it is hours in a day, skills you carry within, or resources you manage, is not random or accidental. They are gifts entrusted to you for a greater purpose. Too often, people live as if what they possess belongs solely to them, forgetting that life itself is borrowed time, talents are cultivated grace, and resources are blessings meant to be multiplied, not hoarded. True stewardship begins with recognizing that what you have is not ownership but trust, and how you handle that trust determines the impact and legacy of your life. Time is one of the greatest treasures given to us, yet it is also the most wasted. Many spend hours scrolling, worrying, or running after things that will not matter in the long run. The tragedy is not that we run out of time, but that we fail to value the time we have. Every sunrise is an opportunity to invest your hours wisely, moments to grow, moments to love, moments to build something that lasts beyond you. Stewardship of time means asking yourself daily, am I spending these hours in alignment with purpose? Or am I scattering them on distractions? When you honor God with your time by seeking His presence first, by prioritizing what matters most, you find that your days become lighter, your path clearer, and your impact greater. Time surrendered is never time lost, it is time multiplied. Talents are another form of treasure. Each person has been gifted uniquely, some with the ability to speak, others with the ability to build, to create, to lead, to heal, or to encourage, yet many bury their talents in fear or comparison. They look at what others have and conclude that what they carry is too small to matter. But stewardship is not about the size of the gift. It is about faithfulness with the gift. When you sharpen your abilities, not for applause but for service, you honor the one who gave them. A talent unused is wasted potential, but a talent invested becomes a channel of blessing. Stewardship of talent is not about perfection, it is about willingness. It is saying, here I am, use me. And when you place your abilities in God's hands, they grow beyond what you could imagine, touching lives and opening doors you never expected. Then there is treasure, the material resources entrusted to you. Money, possessions, influence, these are powerful tools, but they can either enslave you or serve you, depending on how you steward them. Many live with a closed fist, afraid of losing what they have, and in doing so, they stop the flow of blessing. Others live with open hands, giving, sharing, and sowing, and they discover a paradox the more they release, the more they receive. Stewardship of treasure is not about how much you have, but how you handle what you have. Whether in little or in plenty, generosity reveals trust. It says, what I have is not my source, it is a seed. And when you sow seeds of generosity, you reap harvests of joy, provision, and impact that money alone could never buy. Stewardship ties directly to responsibility. With every gift comes a question, how will you use it? Not just for yourself, but for the greater good. Time can be wasted or invested. Talent can be hidden or multiplied. Treasure can be hoarded or shared. The choice reveals where your heart truly rests. Stewardship is not about perfection or pressure. It is about posture, living open-handed, grateful, and intentional. When you honor God with your time, talent, and treasure, you step into a flow of blessing that touches not only your life, but the lives of those around you. You live lighter, you give deeper, and you leave a legacy that echoes long after you are gone. To steward well is to live with the awareness that nothing is random, nothing is wasted, and nothing is truly yours to keep. You are a caretaker of the gifts in your hands, and how you use them becomes your testimony. Time, talent, and treasure are sacred trusts. Honor them, and you honor God. Love, in action, serving people, is the proof that God is first. Love is not an abstract idea, nor is it simply a feeling that flickers with emotion. Real love is demonstrated, lived out in tangible choices, consistent actions, and everyday moments. Many people speak of devotion to God, yet the true evidence of placing Him first is reflected in how we treat others. Words of worship are empty if not paired with deeds of compassion. The truest measure of love for God is not found in lofty declarations, but in humble service, serving the last, the least, and even the ones who may never return the favor. When love becomes action, it transforms relationships. It is easy to say we care, but it is sacrifice that makes those words real. Love is patience when someone tests your limits. Love is listening without rushing to respond. Love is forgiving when your pride wants to hold on to hurt. Love is extending kindness even when you feel unnoticed. These acts are not always glamorous, but they are powerful because they reflect God's nature through you. Serving others becomes the visible expression of an invisible devotion, the light that proves God truly holds first place in your heart. Love in action also redefines strength. The world often views strength as domination, control, or the ability to get ahead of others. But true strength is shown in service. It takes greater power to lift others than to push them down, greater courage to build bridges than to burn them, and greater faith to serve quietly than to be celebrated loudly. When you put God first, pride moves to the background and humility rises. You begin to see people not as obstacles or competitors, but as souls worthy of care. This perspective reshapes how you use influence, resources, and time. Authority becomes service, and leadership becomes stewardship. Love in action reaches beyond comfort zones. It challenges you to step into places you would rather avoid, to notice the overlooked, to embrace the outcast, to give when it stretches you. It calls you to show up not just for those who love you back, but for those who cannot repay you. This kind of love does not keep score, it keeps faith. It does not wait for applause. It moves because it is aligned with God's heart. And while it may not always be recognized by people, it leaves an eternal mark that nothing can erase. Every small act, an encouraging word, a meal shared, a burden lifted, echoes further than you realize because love multiplies in ways beyond your control. Love in action also becomes the glue of communities. Division thrives when selfishness rules, but unity flourishes when love leads. When God is first, love moves you to be a peacemaker rather than a divider, a bridge builder rather than a wall creator. It inspires you to celebrate others' victories instead of envying them, to share your resources instead of clutching them, and to seek understanding rather than judgment. In families, it heals wounds. In workplaces, it fosters respect. In cities, it brings light where there is despair. A life that prioritizes God is never isolated. It always overflows into the lives of others. The beauty of love in action is that it transforms not only those you serve, but also yourself. Serving people refines your character, stretches your heart, and deepens your faith. It teaches you to release pride, to practice patience, and to embody compassion. It reminds you that life is not measured by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. You discover joy in lifting others, peace in forgiving freely, and purpose in serving faithfully. Love in action creates a ripple effect, touching hearts you may never meet, and inspiring change you may never fully see. Putting God first cannot remain hidden. It must show itself in how you live, how you give, how you treat people. Love is the evidence. When love moves from words to works, from intention to action, from emotion to sacrifice, then the world sees the reflection of God in you. And that is the ultimate testimony, not how loudly you declare your faith, but how deeply you love through action. When we step back and look at the journey of putting God first, we begin to see a thread running through every part of life: order, identity, presence, obedience, stewardship, and love. Each keynote is not just a principle to be admired, but a practice to be lived. When God is given the highest place, everything else finds its rightful place. Confusion turns into clarity, restlessness into peace, and striving into purpose. To put God first is to reorder your world so that identity comes before activity, presence before plans, obedience before outcomes, stewardship before self-indulgence, and love and action before empty words. It is to live each day not out of fear of failure or hunger for recognition, but out of alignment with the one who holds all things together. This is not a life of pressure, but of peace, not of chaos, but of clarity, not of emptiness, but of overflow. This is the legacy worth leaving, that when others look at your life, they don't just see achievements or possessions, but they see a person whose choices, relationships, and actions revealed one central truth: God was first. Because when God is first, you are never last. When God is first, you never walk alone. And when God is first, your life becomes a living testimony that points others higher. So as you leave here today, make the decision not just to hear these words, but to live them. Make the quiet but powerful choice to put God first in your mornings, your decisions, your relationships, your resources, and your actions. And watch how everything else, piece by piece, begins to fall into place, not perfectly, but purposefully. Let your story be one that declares without question this was a life ordered by God, rooted in faith, and overflowing with love. That is the power, the peace, and the promise of putting God first.